my husband Camille apologized to me in such a Philippines manner, saying he got his mistress pregnant and we needed to break up. I was dumbfounded, and my affection for him ran out 6 months ago. Is the mistress someone I know? I asked. Yeah, it's Kyra. Remember meeting her again at Alice's wedding reception. Since then, my husband seemed completely unashamed. Alice's wedding was the year before last, so you've been cheating for over a year. Alice was a college classmate, and Kyra was a junior 2 years behind me. She was in the same research group as Alice, and we played tennis together in college, so I remember her well. She was nicknamed Little Devil behind her back and was quite famous in a way. Huh. Oh, is that so? Time flies when you get older. My husband just laughed it off. What on earth was he thinking? I can't understand him at all. I'm Viola, 30 years old. I met my husband in the college tennis club despite him being 5 years older at 35. He often showed up as an alumnus who loved happy hours, had lots of friends, and was friendly with everyone. He took great care of freshmen and was kind, but I later realized it was limited to girls after we started dating. I cried many times due to his cheating habits back then, but I loved him and married him right after graduation. But once I started working, I got to know the real him, or rather, his useless side. He frequently appeared in the tennis club's clubhouse, acting all high and mighty with the juniors because he was completely ignored by his peers. The truth was he was so incompetent at his job that he wasn't given any serious responsibilities. Even now, there's no prospect of a raise or promotion. He's just a pretentious good-for-nothing who can't do his job or household chores. I tried various things to change him after we got married, but his refusal to change made me give up. The reason I had to divorce him wasn't just that work was busy and it was a hassle, but also because his parents were good people, a reason that had nothing to do with my husband himself. So look, we need to split up quickly because of the baby coming. You can have this apartment, and I'll leave. That's the end of it, okay? I was taken aback by his careless words and my husband's sly grin. What? No way. Let's part ways cleanly. This is not a good opportunity. As I neared my 40s, I started wanting a child. I had graduated college and started working as a full-time employee. I found myself in a situation where I was earning more than my husband, and my company offered excellent parental and maternity leave benefits. I was ready to start a family, but despite our efforts, it just wasn't happening, and it broke my heart. The love I once felt for my husband had dwindled away, especially after discovering his affair and the news that he got the other woman pregnant. I was determined to cleanly and completely end the relationship. What infuriated me even more was his lack of remorse. Instead of apologizing, he simply voiced his needs and demands. It was evident that it was time to put an end to this unpleasant relationship that had dragged on for years. We would involve a lawyer, ask for compensation, and divide our property. And of course, we would expect something from Kyra as well. However, when I voiced my concerns about the financial aspect, my husband callously suggested that I take on the debt myself since it was his affair that caused the separation. When I glared at him, he relented, admitting that he might need his father's help to cover the expenses. I proceeded with the divorce proceedings and hired a lawyer. Despite multiple calls from my in-laws pleading with me to reconsider, I remained steadfast in my decision. Even my father-in-law broke down in tears, acknowledging that if I left, it would spell the end for him. My mother-in-law begged me to reconsider, expressing her love for me like her own daughter. But even they understood once I laid bare the truth about my husband's constant infidelity and laziness. Finally, they apologized profusely, hanging their heads in shame. They even paid the compensation in a lump sum on behalf of my husband, who had no savings of his own. They made him promise never to ask for their help again and to repay them promptly. I still can't fathom how such a careless and irresponsible man could come from parents as decent and responsible as his. I decided to retreat to my parents' house. The divorce proceedings, which I had anticipated as a hassle, wrapped up faster than I expected. Returning to my recently relocated family home, 6 months flew by. I found myself consumed by work on weekdays and occupied with household chores on weekends, leaving little room to dwell on my ex-husband. Then, out of the blue, my best friend Alice called, seething with anger from the moment she started speaking. Viola, did you know your ex-husband Camille and Kyra? They're living it up in a new high-rise apartment, flaunting their wealth everywhere. Kara even had the audacity to invite me to her baby shower party. The presents alone cost over $100, and there's a $100 participation fee. It's outrageous, isn't it? She exclaimed. I was taken aback by the news. I hadn't realized that Kyra had given birth, let alone why she would reach out to Alice. Both my ex-husband and Kyra were well aware that Alice was my best friend. Why would Kyra even extend an invitation to her, knowing Alice would undoubtedly relay everything to me? When I tentatively mentioned this to Alice, her anger escalated even further. She did it deliberately, Viola. Deliberately. That awful woman had the nerve to tell me she's so happy now, thanks to Viola breaking up with Camille. Can you believe her audacity? She's the worst kind of person. I want to put her in her place somehow. Alice raged. That nickname from our college days resurfaced in my mind. Kara was always known as the little devil, stirring up trouble among seemingly happy couples. Even when relationships were strained because of her involvement, she remained composed, wearing a facade of innocence. If a couple splits up just because someone else shows interest, it wasn't true love to begin with, right? They would have broken up eventually anyway, so what's the harm? She'd say, her words dripping with sugary sweetness, all the while smirking knowingly. I felt a pang of pity for Kyra, realizing she might never have experienced genuine love. Despite this, I knew better than to involve myself with her, so I made the conscious decision to keep my distance, at least for the time being. Kara didn't matter much to me. There was something else that demanded my attention. Alice. There's only one newly constructed high-rise apartment building, right? Have you heard anything about them moving in? I asked Alice, seeking any information she might have. I've never met them, Alice quickly replied, but apparently it was very recent. They'd been boasting about securing a spot. Fortunately, someone who had bought one of the units had to relocate for work and put it back on the market without moving in. Ah, that makes sense, I nodded, processing the information. So, your moving day is Sunday, right? The baby shower party is on Saturday. You'll only need to be cautious for one day. There are multiple elevators, and they might use different entrances. You're right, we haven't crossed paths so far, so it should be fine. Alice concurred. We live together, but unexpected situations can still arise. As fate would have it, an unexpected situation did indeed unfold on Saturday. While waiting for the elevator on the first floor, I found myself face to face with my ex-husband and Kyra as they stepped out of the elevator. Hey, Viola, what are you doing here? My ex-husband spoke first, with Kyra chiming in. Viola, are you here to celebrate with us? You must be eager to see our adorable baby, aren't you? Kyra's voice was cheerful, her smile radiant, but her eyes betrayed a different story. They held no hint of amusement. What? Seriously, did you come to crash the party without an invitation? My ex-husband interjected, his tone incredulous. To scope out the high-rise apartment or catch a glimpse of our little prince. The casual reference to the baby as both baby and prince grated on my nerves. That's not it, I retorted coolly. I was just waiting for the elevator. I responded, consciously switching to a polite tone midway through the conversation. Camille was now my ex, essentially a stranger, and I didn't want to create a scene. Ha, so you're planning to visit my house after all? Camille remarked with a hint of amusement. You're so silly, Viola. Stop being stubborn. Perhaps you're just envious of our luxurious high-rise apartment and our adorable little prince. Do you still harbor feelings for me? Are you feeling lonely and longing to see me again? Camille, that's not acceptable, I interjected firmly. Regardless of any lingering emotions you think I may have, you're now married to Kyra. It's inappropriate for me to barge into your home uninvited. And as for jealousy, Kyra, you're mistaken, but I appreciate your concern. Camille continued, dismissing my words. Sorry, Viola, but Kyra and our son are our top priorities now. You're not welcome here. As I listened to their conversation, I couldn't help but feel perplexed. It had been 6 months since I last saw my ex-husband, and yet his mindset remained as irrational as ever. Kara's attitude was equally baffling. It dawned on me that my cheating ex-husband and his new partner were a perfect match in their own peculiar way. Reflecting on it, I regretted wasting my precious 20s on Camille. I'm utterly ashamed of my past with Camille, wishing to bury those memories deep in darkness. If only I had ended things sooner without making excuses, I wouldn't have to endure this nonsense from my ex-husband and his partner. My words seemed to strike a nerve with Camille, who retorted, What's that? You're really lacking charm. Learn from Kyra. Even her jealousy is endearing. She's just given birth, yet she still takes the effort to look stylish for me. Don't you find her admirable? Not at all embarrassed. I replied calmly. I was simply going to the grocery store. I was dressed in a plain white t-shirt and jeans, clean and presentable. That's the problem. I grew tired of your simplicity. Camille snapped. Enough already. We have nothing to do with each other. Just go home. Annoyed by his dismissive tone, I retorted, actually, this is my home. Seeing their disbelief, I had to explain. I've been living with my parents in this high-rise apartment for 6 months now. My father was approached by salespeople when talks of selling the land he owns arose. They suggested that living in a high-rise would be more convenient, especially as he's getting older. While it's not entirely our land, we received a substantial sum from selling it. During negotiations, we were able to move into one of the higher floors for much less than market value. Camille was taken aback. You're landowners with that much money. If I had known, I wouldn't have agreed to the divorce. Give me back the compensation money. There's no need for a property settlement, I replied firmly. The compensation was a result of your affair, and the property settlement was a matter between us as a married couple. As I spoke, I noticed Kyra mumbling to herself, her silence speaking volumes. I caught it. I can't believe Viola is living in a high-rise. I thought I had totally won, Kyra exclaimed, shooting me a glare. But Viola, you don't have a baby or a loving partner, do you? I haven't lost yet. Look, Kyra, I was never competing with you, I replied calmly. In fact, I'm thankful to you for giving me the opportunity to break up with Camille. Oh, and I'm moving out of my house tomorrow, so I don't think we'll see each other again. What? Why? You just moved into a high-rise, they both exclaimed in surprise. I shrugged, explaining, maybe it's a matter of different values. It just wasn't a good fit for my family. I found living in a high-rise unsuitable for hanging laundry outside. There are no balconies on the higher floors for safety, and only some windows can be opened. It wasn't suitable for my mother and me, who preferred drying laundry and bedding in natural sunlight and wind without using a dryer. Plus, the intense sunlight made it too hot even with the air conditioning on. The building also shakes quite a bit during even a magnitude 3 earthquake. It's designed to sway to prevent collapse, and the higher floors shake more. It was terrifying. Most stressful of all was the daily elevator ride. It gets crowded during the morning commute, and it takes time since it stops on each floor. The advertised 3-minute walk from the station felt much longer in the elevator. We were too bothered by the drawbacks unique to high-rise living, so we decided to move to a regular house with a garden. After all, luckily, our apartment sold quickly at almost the same price we bought it for. As I finished explaining, both my ex-husband and Kyra grinned. So we'll never see each other again. So, a high-rise wasn't suitable for commoners like you. It's more suited for an elite celebrity family like mine, Kyra remarked sarcastically. I couldn't comprehend how he arrived at that conclusion, but one thing became abundantly clear. What I grew to despise and ultimately gave up on was that facet of you, pretentiousness without substance, and unwillingness to change or exert any effort. I reached my breaking point with you, but it's all right now. You're beyond repair, so goodbye, I repeated, echoing my ex-husband's own words back to him. Stepping into the just-arrived elevator, I glanced at Kyra, who was glaring at both my astonished ex-husband and me. Right before the doors closed, I added one final remark. By the way, are you sure the child is truly yours? My ex-husband looked utterly perplexed, prompting me to clarify. I mean exactly what I said, right, Kyra? You understand what I'm implying, don't you? As the doors closed, I didn't know what transpired next in reality. However, during our struggle to conceive, I underwent tests at the gynecologist's, which revealed no issues on my end. I began to suspect the problem might lie with my husband, but he adamantly refused to get tested. Hence, I delivered that incendiary parting shot. Later, I heard from a mutual friend who attended Kyra's baby shower. Despite boasting about their high-rise lifestyle, my ex-husband and Kyra were residing on the 3rd floor. Additionally, despite their extravagant demands for gifts and participation fees, only cheap snacks from the grocery store were served. When a friend voiced a soft complaint, Kyra reportedly exploded, demanding gratitude for the chance to see her baby up close and insisting on payment. This sparked a heated argument between my ex-husband and Kyra, leaving their gathering in disarray. Thanks in part to my earlier cryptic remark, it was revealed that my ex-husband and Kyra had moved into a high-rise but were struggling financially, attempting to swindle money from their friends through fabricated reasons. Their deceit caused outrage among their friends, who promptly left. Meanwhile, my family and I settled into a single-family home with a garden where I recently welcomed an adorable kitten. Our former high-rise was embroiled in controversy due to significant defects and illegal construction methods, making it unsellable. Reflecting on our situation, we realized we were unexpectedly fortunate. Now, I find solace in my severed ties with my ex-husband and cherish the tranquility of my peaceful days. As I hang the laundry on a sunny afternoon, my kitten sometimes curls up on the clothes, its adorable sleeping face bringing me a sense of contentment. Today, like many others, was a good day.
My husband's mom, Mill, compared my pregnancy to my sister-in-law's, saying hers was perfect and mine wasn't. After my sister-in-law gave birth, both she and my husband stopped talking to Mill. My husband and I have been married for more than 2 years, and we've been together for 7. He's amazing, the man of my dreams, and we have a great life together. My big Mexican family loves him, and I haven't heard anyone say they don't like him. He's respectful to everyone, which is why I fell in love with him. We rarely argue, except when it comes to his mom, Mill. Mill is difficult to deal with. My husband's family is smaller than mine. Besides his parents, he has a sister who got married last year. His parents are conservative Christians from a small town, and his mom is overly protective and controlling. She insists on spending holidays together as a family and causes a scene if we don't agree. When I first met his family, his dad and I got along fine. His sister treats me like her own sister, but his mom is a different story. She says sexist things to me, like when I told them I'm a marine biologist specializing in conservation efforts for marine life. His dad thought it was awesome, but Mill didn't say anything and just frowned. Later, my husband's dad called him to say that Mill wanted him to end our relationship because she thinks I'm not good enough for her son. She believes I don't act like a woman should because I have a job. I really enjoy being a scientist, and my husband has never told me to be a housewife or choose a stereotypically feminine job. If he had, we probably wouldn't be together. But apparently, that's what his mother, Mill, thought he needed. She complained that with my well-paying job, I might not become a housewife after marriage, and he should have found a better woman. My husband firmly told his dad, Phil, to let his mother know that who he chooses to marry is none of her business. I was relieved he stood up for me. This was a positive sign for me, and it's why I didn't end our relationship right then and thereafter hearing what his mother thought about me. Unfortunately, as we got more serious, Mill became worse towards me. Despite my husband trying to protect me, she made snide comments when we were alone, insisting that a good wife should be a homemaker. She also repeatedly told me I didn't look like the kind of woman my husband should have brought home because I'm not feminine enough to carry children. At first, I thought she might be joking, but when she kept saying it, I realized she was serious. One day during dinner at her insistence, she went on a rant about missing a time when women took care of their families, and men went out to earn. My husband responded, saying the world doesn't work like that anymore, and he's lucky to have a partner like me. We both earn well and take care of the house together. Mill shook her head, insisting that women should act like women and men should act like men. I knew she was intentionally talking about me, but I tried to stay calm. Phil told her to calm down and that it wasn't the right time for that kind of discussion. However, she got upset, seeing he wasn't supporting her. She continued saying she was just speaking the truth and wanted the best for her son. Then she looked pointedly at me. I'd had enough, so I quietly got up from the table and asked my husband to drive me home, which he readily agreed to. He looked at his mother with disappointment and we left. Later, when Phil called to mend things, I firmly told him it wasn't up to Mill to decide who her son marries, and she should stop taunting me about having a job. Phil agreed and tried to apologize on her behalf, but I wasn't having it. My husband supported me and told his dad that if she didn't apologize, he wouldn't go back to see her. Perhaps this threat scared her into apologizing to me, and she promised never to bring it up again. So I managed to let that situation roll off my shoulders. Unfortunately, some issues don't go away easily. Just a few months later, when my husband and I first started living together before getting married, and I had to go on a research expedition for a few weeks, she found out. She called me to ask who would take care of the house and her son. I was confused, put her on speaker so my husband driving next to me could hear, and asked her what she meant by that. She started to say how now that I was living with her son, I needed to stop being so immature. She kept saying I shouldn't go on these expeditions and should commit more to being a good partner to her son. My husband angrily told her he didn't need anyone to take care of him, and we were equal partners sharing responsibilities. She got upset, saying we couldn't get married because I didn't know how to be a proper wife. My husband asked her to mind her own business and cut her call. When he proposed, my Mill wasn't happy. She was even more upset when she learned we wanted a small wedding due to the expense and our plans to move into our own place. I decided to invite only close family members, with plans for a celebration with others later. But Mill argued with my husband, wanting to invite all her friends. When he asked if she would pay for their plates, she got offended, saying we both earned well and should be ashamed to ask. We stuck to our decision for a small wedding, making it clear she'd be responsible for any uninvited guests she invited. During the wedding, she loudly complained about everything and made it clear she hated my wedding gown. I ignored her because I didn't want to be hurt by her mean comments. My sister tried her best to keep Mill away from me for the rest of the evening. Last year in mid-April, we found out I was pregnant, which was great news since we had been trying for some time. We waited until I was around 9 weeks pregnant to tell our close family and friends. My Mill was upset she wasn't the first to know. She called me, saying she had every right to know first, and she was disappointed in me. I told her we wanted to wait before sharing such important news, and if she wanted to complain, she could. She could feel free to call my husband, as I was in no mood to listen to her lectures about what a good woman should do. Just a month after I announced my pregnancy, Sil told us she was pregnant too. We were shocked yet pleased, knowing there would be a new addition to our family. Sil wasn't married but had a serious longtime boyfriend whom we had all met. I knew Mill would make a big deal about Sil's pregnancy before marriage, which she did. My husband supported his sister, and eventually, Mill accepted it. Phil was emotional and happy to have 2 grandchildren. Sil and I started spending more time together since we were simultaneously pregnant. We leaned on each other for advice and companionship during this magical yet challenging period. While shopping for our babies and deciding on nurseries, Mill started constantly comparing our pregnancies. She turned it into a competition, saying Sil was better equipped to be a mother since she had always been a homemaker, unlike me with a job. Sil and I were bothered by her remarks. During my gender reveal party, I asked Sil to find out the baby's gender from our doctor to prepare the envelope. She did the same for her party. Mill became furious, having a meltdown, accusing me of taking away her grandchild by not allowing her to organize the gender reveal. She insisted my husband should put his foot down so she could be more involved. My husband didn't like how she was speaking to me, so he told her to leave or be permanently cut off from our grandchild's life. She made a scene, crying and insisting she wanted the best for her grandchild, but eventually left. Later, Phil and Sil called concerned about her behavior. We had to explain everything. Sil was shocked and urged me to rest, given the stressful situation. I was distressed after my Mill's screaming episode during Christmas. My husband told her we wouldn't be coming because I couldn't travel long distances due to my condition. She got upset, accusing him of straying away from the family, and hung up when he refused to change his decision. We hoped she understood, but a week later, she texted asking us to be at her place at 4:00 p.m. My husband reminded her about our earlier conversation, but she called screaming again, claiming he had no right to avoid family and accusing me of deterring him. My husband stood his ground, and she started yelling about him needing to control me. I began realizing how controlling and toxic Mill was becoming. I shared my concerns with my husband and Sil, and they agreed she was crossing the line. However, dealing with their mother was exhausting. When it was time to give birth, we didn't have time to inform anyone as I went into preterm labor at 33 weeks. Our baby boy was born at 34 weeks via an emergency C-section. After confirming our well-being, my husband announced our son's birth in the family group chat and informed my family. Everyone congratulated me, But Mill had another meltdown for not being told about the labor and birth. She texted us, insisting she should have been in the delivery room, watching her grandchild come into the world. I didn't reply, focused on my baby. When we announced his name, she called my husband, crying that it sounded too Mexican. She suggested a different name, but we didn't listen. When it was time for her to meet our son, she insisted on calling him a completely different name. My husband firmly asked her to stop, but she tried justifying it as her special little name for him. She also hates that I breastfeed my son because it takes him away from her. She suggests I start feeding him formula so she can spend more time with him. My mother explained the importance of breast milk for a newborn, but Mill argued it was unfair. Her taunts and controlling nature became unbearable. The final straw came when she invited me to lunch to discuss something important. Despite trying to cancel, she insisted we meet. At lunch, she asked about our son's godfather. I knew she wouldn't like the answer. I explained that my husband and I had chosen each other as our children's godparents. Mill burst into tears in the restaurant, yelling about how I could do this to her. She insisted she should be my son's godmother as his grandparent. I reminded her of her belief that Sil was better equipped, so she should be happy that my son would be taken care of well. She argued only she could be trusted and demanded to be his godparent. Fed up, I firmly told her we were done discussing it, and she could talk to my husband later. I told Sil about the lunch, and she didn't like that Mill wanted to be our son's godparent. My husband, too, couldn't understand Mill's behavior and ignored her calls. Last week, Sil gave birth to her daughter, and she asked me to be in the delivery room for support. I happily obliged, with my husband and mother caring for our son at home. After Sil gave birth, I made sure her boyfriend took over the duties. He revealed that apparently Sil, tired of Mill's toxic behavior, took a stand and decided to implement a no-contact rule between Mill and her daughter. Sil asked the hospital to refuse Mill entry, allowing only Phil inside to meet the baby. This decision was shocking and unexpected, as I had never imagined Sil would stand up to Mill in this way. It made me realize why Mill had been calling me all day, possibly trying to blame me or convince me to persuade Sil to see her granddaughter. When I talked to Sil later, I found out that this decision came after witnessing the extent of Mill's actions towards me over the years. Going no contact was a necessary boundary to protect her daughter from Mill's toxic influence. It was a moment of reckoning for Mill, as the consequences of her actions finally came crashing down. The fallout has been severe, and Mill is completely cut off from her daughter's life, unable to witness precious moments with her grandchild. Since then, I have started to think if it would be the right decision for us to cut off Mill permanently as well. Would it be too cruel? Update 1. Hello everyone. First off, I want to thank you all for your kind words and advice. It means a lot to me. My husband and I have not had any contact with Mill since we found out that Sil has cut her off. She continues to call us, but we ignore them. After discussing with my husband, we agreed that for our mental peace, it would be better to cut her out permanently, as there is no guarantee she won't behave the same way with our son. Everyone asking why we waited so long. My husband grew up in this toxic environment and didn't fully realize how wrong it was until his mother started misbehaving with me. He has always supported and protected me, but his mother is just too much to handle. We set up a group video call with his sister and Phil, where we discussed our decision, and they are on our side. Now we just need to inform Mill about our decision. Update 2. If you're itching for an update, sit down. It's a bit long. My husband decided to call his mother and tell her about our decision yesterday evening. When she first picked up the call, she started screaming at him about how long it had been since he talked with her and that she wanted to meet our son immediately. My husband remained quiet, and until she was done with her demands, and then gently let her know how she was right and that he needed to step up and be more of a man. Mill immediately agreed, saying this is what she had wanted from him all along. But my husband interrupted her, stating as a man of our family, he had decided to cut her off from us permanently to protect us from her toxic ideology and drama. Mill was dumbfounded at first, perhaps trying to process what he had just spoken. When she understood the severity of our decision, She started saying she was coming over to meet us and that nothing could stop her from meeting her grandson. My husband immediately warned her that we wouldn't let her in, and we would call the police on her for trespassing on our property. She then started screaming, claiming it was probably my decision and that I was tearing the family apart. My husband told her to think whatever she wanted, but he was done with her. She continued to scream, saying this is why he should have never married a woman like me and that she knew I was bad news all along. Naturally, my husband got angry. He reminded her that we were not the only ones cutting off contact, and still has done the same thing. So the issue is clearly her, and she needs to start accepting that. Mill, as usual, kept arguing back, claiming I had polluted the minds of everyone and successfully taken her children away from her. Exasperated, my husband told her if she wanted to blame someone, she should blame herself for being bitter and racist. He said everyone was just done with her, and she needed to come to terms with her own actions. This shut my Mill up, and he blocked her after their conversation. I have done the same. I've also informed my family about the situation and not to pick up Mill's calls for now. I feel bad for my husband and Sil for not having a supportive mother, but I'm also glad that I won't ever have to go through such shitty situations ever again. Update 3. It's been 2 months since my last update, and I'm happy to share that our son is doing well. S and I continue to remain close, meeting regularly for playdates with our babies. It's adorable to see how they are bonding, and I hope they continue to be each other's best friends as they grow up. Another happy update is that Sil is finally getting married to her baby daddy, as we all knew she would. Now, on to the main update. We continue to have no contact with Mill. For those concerned about our safety, don't worry, we have cameras installed everywhere, and we changed our locks. There's no way Mill can disturb us. I doubt she will ever confront us publicly, since many people know exactly why we cut her off, and she must be embarrassed. After we cut off all contact, she did try to persuade Phil to talk with us, but he refused and let her know he was getting sick of her too. I guess when her own husband told her this, it might have finally made her think. A few weeks later, she asked Phil to tell us how sorry she was for everything she had done to me. I doubt she genuinely feels apologetic, which is why we continue to not talk with her. Until today, Phil and my family continue to visit us and bond with our grandchild, which is how it's going to be in the near future. Mill got really upset at my baby shower. She insulted me and tried to name my baby, but things got out of control and she ended up getting arrested. I'm 29, married to my amazing husband, Gary, and we're expecting our first child. Gary and I have been together for a long time, got married 4 years ago, and we've been trying to have a baby since last year. We were overjoyed when we found out about my pregnancy 6 months ago. We faced life's ups and downs together, and the news of our little one has brought so much happiness to our relationship. Every day brings us closer to meeting our baby, and we can't wait. Pregnancy has been a mix of emotions, from the excitement of finding out to feeling the baby kick. Gary has been my support through it all, attending every doctor's appointment, reading parenting books with me, and helping set up the nursery. We're fully in baby mode now, discussing names, decorating the nursery, and making plans for the future. Gary is thrilled to be a dad, and his enthusiasm warms my heart. We're sharing the preparations for the baby and facing the challenges and fun parts of pregnancy together, enjoying every moment. 2 months ago, we decided it was time to share the exciting news with our family. After making sure we passed the crucial first trimester, we invited our parents, close family, and friends for lunch. They were expecting a regular lunch, but when they noticed my growing stomach, their expressions changed to joy and amazement. My mother even started crying when she saw me and confirmed the pregnancy. My mom understood why we kept the pregnancy a secret and was happy to be a grandmother soon. However, Gary's mom, Barbara, had a different reaction. Instead of sharing our joy, she got angry when she found out we kept the pregnancy hidden. She felt left out and accused me of excluding her on purpose. Even though I tried to explain, she stayed mad and wouldn't talk to me. This put a damper on what should have been a joyful family occasion. Throughout the night, Barbara ignored me and even disrespected my mom, who had always been kind to her before. Barbara seemed upset, buried in her phone while everyone else talked. She openly told everyone how she had no idea about my pregnancy, making her feel like she missed out on time with a grandchild who wasn't even born yet. My husband and his brother noticed Barbara's frustration, and as tension grew, I reached a breaking point. I stepped out to gather myself, and my mom comforted me until I could return. At the end of the night, Barbara made a point of saying goodbye to me last, barely exchanging more than a quick greeting. Later, my husband walked them to the car, where they had a loud argument that I could hear from the foyer. Barbara used the opportunity to complain about me, making the situation even stranger. Luckily, all our guests had left by then. It was just my parents, Gary, and his parents left. Barbara angrily confronted Gary, expressing disbelief that I had the audacity to keep the pregnancy a secret from her, claiming I didn't consider her family. My husband calmly explained that we waited until it was safe to share the news, but Barbara started yelling. Their conversation went like this. Barbara, this is our grandchild. I deserve to know from the beginning. Gary, Mom, it's not about deserving. It was a decision we made together. We wanted to be cautious. Barbara, cautious? I am her mother-in-law. She should have trusted me. This is all her fault. My husband lost his temper, telling his mother it was their decision, and if she blamed me, she should blame him too. He asked her to stop attacking me and leave to cool off. Barbara stormed away, leaving my husband visibly frustrated and disappointed. I didn't realize tears were streaming down my face. Gary comforted me and guided me back inside. My parents stayed back, sensing the tension until I felt composed. Barbara didn't stop there. Later that night, I got a message from her. Anxiously, I read it, and it said, I must say I am deeply disappointed in you. You knowingly kept a significant piece of information from me, and I find it absolutely unforgivable. I can't believe you would rob me of the joy of knowing about my grandchild from the very beginning. This is not how a family should operate, and I find it disrespectful and hurtful. Instead of apologizing for your immature action, you are causing a divide between me and my son. Shame on you. Her words cut through me, and I felt a mix of anger and hurt. I showed the message to Gary, and he was furious. He couldn't understand why his mother would react so negatively and blame me. Gary decided to call her, warning her not to send such negative messages, as it might distress me further. He even threatened to cut her off if this behavior continued. Gary's words and angry tones seemed to have an impact on Barbara. Faced with the possibility of being cut off, she changed her tune. Instead of acknowledging her own role in the conflict, she proposed a solution. She claimed the only way she could forgive us was if we allowed her to throw us a baby shower. This sudden turn of events left us surprised and skeptical about her motives. She pleaded how nothing would bring her more joy than to throw a grand celebration for me and her grandchild, taking care of everything. Gary looked at me curiously, but I remained skeptical. Barbara's sudden change of heart seemed more like a tactical move to regain control and assert her dominance, rather than a genuine attempt at reconciliation. Despite my reservations, Gary, always wanting to find a middle ground and keep the peace, entertained the idea of accepting her offer. I expressed my concerns to Gary, stressing that accepting her offer might only fuel her belief that her behavior was acceptable. Gary understood my perspective but hoped that allowing his mother to throw a baby shower could be a way for us to mend fences before the baby arrived. I reluctantly agreed, and Gary informed his mother to go ahead with the planning for my baby shower. She was overjoyed and expressed her gratitude for allowing her to take charge. Despite entrusting her with this responsibility, I assumed there would be some level of collaboration where she would seek my input and consider my preferences for my own baby shower, with the event still a month away. I expected more detailed planning for my baby shower in the coming week. To my dismay, my mother-in-law went rogue, taking charge of everything without consulting anyone, including me. When my mom tried to discuss the baby shower with her, my mother-in-law simply said everything had been decided, and it would be a surprise for me. The lack of communication and consideration left me feeling disheartened and frustrated. On the day of my baby shower, the air was filled with a mix of excitement and tension. I arrived at the venue, a local banquet hall, surrounded by close friends eager to celebrate our upcoming little one. However, I couldn't help but notice the outrageous decorations my mother-in-law had chosen. A sea of brown and beige balloons, creating a theme that was entirely her creation. I absolutely hated the decoration. It looked like a misguided attempt at a safari theme gone wrong. The overwhelming presence of brown and beige clashed with the vibrant atmosphere I had envisioned. I had imagined soft pastels and delicate touches, but my mother-in-law had gone the opposite way. Tension escalated when I saw an eye-catching display near the entrance. An enormous banner featuring an elaborate collage of my husband's baby pictures with Barbara. Everyone looked confused, wondering why she chose to display my husband's baby pictures during my baby shower. She laughed it off, saying she expected our baby to look exactly like my husband, and she was proud of how cute he was as a child. I stared at her, trying to comprehend if she had lost her mind. It was clear she was determined to make the day more about her experiences as a mother than about the imminent addition to our family. As more guests arrived, their expressions ranged from confusion to polite discomfort. Looking around the room, the sea of brown and beige balloons, coupled with the towering banner showcasing my mother-in-law and my husband, created an ambience far from the elegant and joyous atmosphere I had envisioned for my baby shower. I exchanged apologetic glances with some of my friends who clearly shared my sentiment. When my mother walked in, her eyes widened in shock as she observed the horror my mother-in-law had unleashed upon the venue. Her eyes then locked onto the banner, and I could sense her disbelief at the audacity of showcasing a college that seemed more like an exhibition of my husband's childhood. In a bold move, my mother walked over to the banner. Her expression shifted from disbelief to determination. Without uttering a word, she firmly grabbed hold of the banner, decisively removing it from its prominent display. The room fell silent, and all eyes turned toward my mother as she carried away the intrusive display that overshadowed the celebration. I couldn't help but feel a surge of gratitude toward my mother for her unwavering support. My mother-in-law, who was busy talking to other guests, looked in horror as my mother threw the banner into the dustbin. In a disapproving tone, she asked what my mother thought she was doing, insisting the banner was a special touch to celebrate the baby and the family. Undeterred by the disapproval, my mother responded with a firm yet composed voice, asserting that the celebration was about me and my baby, not a showcase of my mother-in-law's personal achievements. The guests around them were drawn to this unexpected confrontation. Undeterred by the disapproval, my mother responded with a firm yet composed voice, asserting that the celebration was about me and my baby, not a showcase of my mother-in-law's personal achievements. The guests around them were drawn to this unexpected confrontation. My mother-in-law, sensing the attention shift, tried to regain control of the situation, explaining she thought it would be nice for everyone to know who was responsible for the event's beauty. She wanted everyone to see how cute Gary was as a child. However, my mother continued, reminding her that she begged me to allow her to throw the baby shower, and that it wasn't a platform for her personal agenda or an attempt to steal the spotlight. The room hushed as the exchange unfolded, with guests glancing at each other uncomfortably. Realizing her attempt to dictate the narrative had backfired, my mother-in-law retreated with a forced smile and returned to her conversations with other guests. Despite the tension lingering throughout the event, the baby shower continued, with me trying my best to focus on the positive energy for my friends and family. I thought there wouldn't be any more surprises from my mother-in-law, who seemed to be drinking a bit too much for a baby shower. We played various party games, and the guests were slowly starting to enjoy themselves. Then came the gift opening session, and everyone's thoughtful gifts for my baby were pleasant surprises. However, my anticipation turned to bewilderment when my mother-in-law handed me a conspicuously large gift box with an exaggerated smile. The room fell silent, and I felt a mixture of embarrassment and frustration. My mother looked at her angrily, and the guests exchanged awkward glances, unsure of how to react. Trying to diffuse the tension, I mustered a weak smile and thanked her for the thoughtful gift, suppressing the urge to roll my eyes. The situation escalated during the cake-cutting ceremony. My mother-in-law had ordered an extravagant tiered cake with over-the-top decorations. She made a big show of it, clinking her glass to make everyone look at her. Wondering what she was up to, we all looked at her curiously and waited for her to speak. Barbara then announced that she had come up with the perfect name for our baby girl. Keep in mind, we hadn't even settled on a name ourselves. She proudly declared that the baby would be named after her great-grandmother, with a name that seemed straight out of a Victorian novel. I was shocked and a little irritated that she assumed she had the naming rights. I stepped in politely, explaining that my husband and I wanted to pick our baby's name together. It was a decision we wanted to make as parents. However, my mother-in-law wasn't having any of it. She insisted she had the perfect name, and if I were a good daughter-in-law, I should accept it, given the money she had spent on the baby shower. I was shocked at her sense of entitlement. I firmly stated that only my husband and I had the right to name our baby. Regardless of who hosted the baby shower, this decision was ours alone. That's when my mother-in-law started yelling at me in front of everyone, claiming, I found myself in an extremely difficult situation as my mother-in-law, Barbara, became increasingly aggressive and disrespectful at my baby shower. She insisted that she should have the right to name my baby and criticized my upbringing, claiming I should be thanking her instead of denying her this supposed right. Barbara grew more and more aggressive, pointing her fingers at my face. My mother stepped in as a shield, but Barbara continued to shout, asserting herself as the actual mommy of my baby, claiming that she gave birth to my husband and it was his sperm that impregnated me. Her words were truly disgusting. Despite my mother's attempts to stop Barbara's nasty comments, she just got angrier, insulting me and claiming my mom did a terrible job raising me. It was clear she had too much to drink and trying to talk sense into her was pointless. The situation was getting worse, making everyone uncomfortable. Realizing the escalating situation, I decided I had endured enough humiliation. Trying to salvage some dignity, I walked out with the gifts my friends had generously brought, leaving behind the present my mother-in-law had given me. However, in her intoxicated state, Barbara snatched the gifts back from my hand and tossed them to the ground, accusing me of being ungrateful and a witch who was coming between her and her son. The tense atmosphere drew more attention, and I noticed some people starting to film the incident. To contain the chaos, I asked one of my close friends to politely request people to leave the event. Undeterred, Barbara continued hurling nasty accusations, creating a scene that no one could have anticipated. Frustration turned to anger, and as a last resort, I decided to call the police to remove her from my vicinity, as I was starting to feel extremely unsafe with her aggressive behavior. Yes, you read that right. I had to involve the police at my own baby shower because of my toxic mother-in-law. When the officers showed up, Barbara went into full drama mode, pointing fingers at me and painting me as the mastermind behind the chaotic event. The cops, thankfully understanding, attempted to reason with her. However, being drunk, she resisted their efforts and even started yelling at the police, which didn't work in her favor. The situation escalated to the point where she was arrested on the spot. I left the event with my mother and close friends, all of us shaken up by the unsettling incident. Since this incident, my husband and I have been dealing with the fallout. My mother-in-law is on a full-blown guilt trip, playing the victim card and garnering sympathy from some family members who were not present at the baby shower because they don't live in the same city. My husband, although he understands why I called the cops, thinks I took it a bit too far. He believes that I could have called him or his father for help. So Reddit, am I wrong for calling the cops on my mother-in-law for ruining my baby shower and pretending to be the actual mommy of the baby? Update 1. I am overwhelmed with the response I have received since deciding to post about my baby shower. I would like to thank everyone for supporting my decision to call the cops. I had never witnessed such an aggressive reaction from my mother-in-law before, and the level of aggression she displayed at the baby shower left me genuinely concerned about the possibility of physical harm, especially considering the potential impact on my unborn child. Since the incident, every guest who attended the baby shower has reached out to express their support. Some of them have even shared recordings of the entire debacle, which I intend to show to my husband. My plan is to have a serious conversation with him in the coming weekend about the future with his mother. Update 2. I showed the recording to my husband. As mentioned earlier, my husband and I found ourselves sitting down for a serious conversation about the events that had transpired. I explained to him in detail how his mother's behavior had escalated throughout the entire ordeal, from the hidden pregnancy revelation to the outrageous baby shower. I described in detail the yelling, accusations, and bizarre gifts she presented. I then shared the recordings with him, which he watched visibly horrified. Watching the videos seemed to bring a reality check for him, making him confront the uncomfortable truth about his mother's actions. He started to sincerely apologize to me for underestimating the severity of the situation and acknowledged that I was right in calling the cops. I had no idea they had gotten this bad. "I'm so sorry you had to go through all that," he expressed, his face reflecting both regret and frustration. He admitted that he had never imagined his mother could be this toxic, as this behavior seemed so out of character for her. He reassured me that he was on my side and emphasized that my safety and well-being, especially during pregnancy, were his top priorities. We then delved into the underlying issues, discussing how his mother's need for control and validation had overshadowed what should have been a joyous occasion. Gary, grappling with the reality of his mother's actions, shared his own concerns about her behavior and acknowledged that she had crossed a line. I told him that after how his mother had behaved with me in front of everyone, I wanted to cut all ties with her. I continued to tell him that he could have a relationship with her if he wanted, but me and our child would not be a part of her life, at least until his mother went for counseling to deal with her aggressive behavior. Hearing this, Gary expressed that what his mother had done was beyond disgusting, and he was willing to cut ties with her as well. I assured him that he did not have to do any such thing, but my husband insisted that his mother had disrespected me and therefore did not have the right to be in our lives anymore. He understood that his mother's behavior was not just about the baby shower, but might have been a culmination of long-standing issues. Moving ahead, Gary has reassured me that he will personally communicate our decision to his mother, making it clear that cutting her off from our lives is entirely his choice. I have also asked him to warn her that if she decides to show up unexpectedly at our doorstep to force me to accept her back into our lives, then I will be forced to call the cops on her again. Update 3. It's been a month since my last update. To everyone asking, me and the baby are doing okay. I can't wait to meet my child very soon as the date approaches. Since my last update, we have ceased all communication with Barbara. Gary had a conversation with his parents, and his father assured him that he would take the necessary steps to ensure that my mother-in-law understands the boundaries we've set and respects our decision. In the aftermath of cutting ties with Barbara, our lives have experienced a noticeable shift. The absence of constant drama and toxicity has brought about a newfound sense of peace and tranquility in our household. Gary and I are now able to focus on preparing for the arrival of our baby without the looming cloud of Barbara's disruptions. The support we receive from friends and family has been invaluable during this challenging time. My parents and my close friends have been pillars of strength, offering their encouragement and understanding. Even some family members who were initially unaware of the extent of Barbara's behavior have come forward to express their support after witnessing the shocking events at the baby shower through the viral videos. Our journey is far from over, but this experience has strengthened our bond and highlighted the importance of facing challenges together as a united front. The decision to sever ties with Barbara was not made lightly, but it has proven to be a necessary step for our well-being. While there may be lingering challenges, we are optimistic about the positive changes this choice has brought into our lives. As we eagerly await the arrival of our little one, we are determined to build a loving and supportive family environment that prioritizes the well-being of both parents and child. Hey everyone, I'm Tina, a 28-year-old woman, and I wanted to open up about a recent chapter in my life that brought some closure to a difficult situation involving my husband and in-laws. This all unfolded a few months ago, and the chaos has only recently settled. I'm still grappling with the emotional aftermath, and I believe sharing my story might offer some relief. Flashback to 2 years ago when I made a significant life decision, marrying my then boyfriend Jake. We met through mutual friends and spent 3 blissful years together. Jake appeared to be a fun and caring person, showering me with love. He hailed from a wealthy family, complemented by a high-paying job. Our connection deepened over shared interests, especially our love for travel. As we progressed from casual dating to a serious relationship, my friends applauded him as a great guy, genuinely happy for us. The relationship was smooth sailing. Jake's care knew no bounds. He surprised me with thoughtful gifts, even presenting a new laptop on my college graduation day. Despite his generosity, I hesitated about him covering most expenses. Jake, I'm just a college student. I can't afford to reciprocate in the same way. Let's at least split other expenses, I'd insist. Jake, however, dismissed my concerns, emphasizing his desire to spoil his girlfriend. He argued that many of his friends did the same for their partners. Gradually, I accepted his gestures, but I made efforts to reciprocate within my means. Upon securing a well-paying job after college, I was thrilled to finally return the favor. We transitioned to splitting expenses evenly and contemplated moving in together. You can move in with me, Jake suggested. I inherited my house from my grandpa, so you won't have to worry about rent. But let's split other expenses. It wouldn't be fair otherwise. Despite my reservations, Jake reassured me that he wanted to take care of me. However, we agreed to divide other costs more equitably, considering the difference in our incomes. Everything appeared to be going well until I finally had the opportunity to meet Jake's family, who resided in a different state quite far from us. Jake, caught up with work commitments, couldn't join them, so I was left to welcome his parents and sister on my own. Prior to this meeting, Jake warned me about their occasional judgmental nature, offering a vague heads-up without elaborating. He simply advised me to play along and ignore any potentially hurtful comments. Despite my reservations, I approached the situation with optimism. However, any shred of positivity quickly evaporated upon their arrival. When Jake's parents and sister landed, they appeared visibly annoyed, a stark contrast to the warm reception I anticipated. As we gathered for a conversation, it became evident that they held a negative opinion of me. So, you're the woman Jake has been seeing. I didn't expect to find you in this house. Do you even pay rent? Sandra, Jake's mother, questioned with a disapproving tone. No, Sandra, I don't pay rent. Jake mentioned that the house is fully paid for, but we split all the bills evenly, I explained, hoping to address any concerns. Sandra dismissed my explanation, asserting, just because the house is paid for doesn't mean you can mooch off him. This is his house, not yours. Remember that for the rest of your life. The conversation took an uncomfortable turn, especially with Jake's sister, Cassie, who seemed more interested in glaring at me than engaging in dialogue. When I attempted to include her by asking about her life, she responded with irritation, mentioning her marriage to a wealthy billionaire back home. Despite my efforts to bridge the gap, she waved me off, and Jake offered no support, seemingly aligning himself with his family's sentiments. Throughout their stay, Dave and Sandra continued to criticize me. They disapproved of my spending on makeup and skincare, insisting I shouldn't indulge in such luxuries when not contributing enough to the household. Their suspicion that I was relying on Jake's finances intensified, fueled by Jake's occasional unfounded remarks against me. For instance, he casually mentioned, Tina was a struggling student, even when it wasn't entirely true. When we first met, I found myself covering all the expenses, given that Tina had just started a job that didn't quite support her apparent taste for luxury. Confused by Jake's unexpected comments, I reminded him that we split our bills, emphasizing that I lived a simple life before and during our relationship. I clarified that any luxury items I owned were gifts from him, and I even used to scold him for overspending. However, Jake insisted that his status demanded extravagant gifts, and now I see it was more about him boasting to his friends. Their visit left a bitter taste, prompting me to question Jake about the whole ordeal. Unfortunately, he shrugged it off, downplaying the situation. You're overthinking, Tina. Don't take it to heart. They meant well. What they said was disrespectful. Relax, you're overreacting, he dismissed. Despite my reservations, 6 months later, Jake proposed, and I happily accepted. We planned an engagement party, which we split evenly, balancing my small business on the side. Jake knew about its growth, but never inquired about the income. To me, it was a fulfilling hobby rather than a significant moneymaker. Deciding it was time to treat myself a bit, I opted for a grand engagement party, and Jake supported the idea. We divided the expenses equally, and I even covered the plane tickets for my extended family to attend. However, on the day of the party, criticism resurfaced. You shouldn't have splurged so much at this party, Tina. You're draining Jake's account before you're even married. At this rate, you'll end up with a backyard wedding. I thought you were financially irresponsible, but it's worse than I thought, they remarked. I firmly declared to Sandra, the party was extravagant, but we both agreed to it. I paid my share, and it was your son's idea to include everyone. Tina insisted a lot, and I couldn't say no. I don't mind spending, but this party cost us a lot. Sandra retorted, accusing me of manipulating Jake into spending money, claiming he just couldn't say no to me. Cassie joined in, asserting that she knew the kind of person I was and that I should have fought better. Frustrated, I excused myself and sought a moment of respite on the venue's lawn, only to find Cassie and her husband Jim laughing at my expense. It felt like my engagement party was unraveling, with Jake oblivious to his family's judgments. Most of his extended family assumed I was jobless, painting me as a dependent fiancé. My mom, perceptive and protective, noticed my distress and approached. Aware of how hard managing finances could be as a single parent, she urged me to reconsider the engagement, pointing out the ongoing mean comments from Jake's family. After the party, I confronted Jake about the situation. He dismissed it as a joke, expressing his love and stating he didn't care about financial matters. However, I reiterated my desire to contribute, especially towards rent, but he brushed off the suggestion. Wedding planning brought more stress, with Jake's parents criticizing my choices and accusing me of bankrupting their son. I defended myself, stating that we were all contributing to the wedding, including my mom. Sandra's response was harsh, accusing me of robbing her son and insinuating that they expected us to empty the bank account for the wedding as well. I calmly addressed Dave's concerns. I'm not asking for money, Dave. I'm simply letting you know that we can pay for this wedding just fine. On the day of the wedding, Cassie continued her comments on my dress and makeup expenses, despite my clarification that my mom covered those costs. The ceremony proceeded smoothly, but during the reception, Sandra and Dave couldn't resist bringing up my spending habits and accusing me of bleeding their son dry. Despite their negativity, I chose to keep quiet to prevent them from spoiling my special day. After a few months, Jake received a significant promotion at work, and he wanted to celebrate with a big family dinner. I was thrilled for him and decided to make the dinner extra special by offering to cover all the expenses. I want this dinner to be extra special, Jake. I'm extremely proud of you, and I want to give you a treat. I've decided to pay for the dinner party completely, I enthusiastically told him. Jake was delighted by my gesture, and I explained that my business was doing well. I had a salary from my job, and I recently gained access to a trust fund from my paternal grandfather. I planned the entire event, ensuring everything was perfect for the celebration. However, when his family arrived, they were visibly displeased with the preparations. Despite positive feedback from others, it soon became evident that his family had issues with the celebration. During the speeches, Sandra stood up and loudly declared, "I thank everyone for gathering here to celebrate my son. He's incredibly hardworking and generous. He deserves this promotion completely." However, his luck just ended there. It's sad that out of all people, he was shackled down by a gold digger. I wish he had the foresight to see what his wife is. Then he wouldn't have to work so hard to fund her luxury life. It's now clear to everyone that his wife is a big spender. From the engagement party to this dinner, she pretty much emptied his accounts. Feeling the weight of the accusations and insults, I took a deep breath and responded, "I feel sorry for my poor boy. I'm glad he had Tina sign the prenup before the wedding. At least some of his assets would be saved. Sandra continued, complaining about her wife's spending habits, expressing relief that she earned enough to keep a trophy wife. Jake joined in, agreeing that he couldn't spend money on himself because there was none left. He remarked that marrying Tina was a mistake, contrasting her with Jim's hypothetical reaction to a gold digger. In shock and frustration, I couldn't hold back any longer. "Do you guys think I am a gold digger?" I asked incredulously, to which Jake added, "Your lifestyle is quite damaging to my bank account." Feeling hurt and misunderstood, I decided to address the accusations head-on. "Since I am such a gold digger to you, let me just show you my bank balance. I guess that will clear things up for you," I declared, revealing my financial standing to everyone. The response was disbelief and accusations. "Did you steal my son's money?" Sandra accused, while Jake questioned, "She must have stolen from you." Frustrated, I clarified, "I don't need to steal money from your son. This is all my blood and sweat. Also, I recently got access to my trust fund left to me by my grandfather. I was going to get a bigger house with it and surprise Jake, but I guess that won't be happening anymore." Despite my attempt to set the record straight, Jake suggested, "We can still buy the house. It'll be a lovely gift." However, I stood firm, expressing my refusal to accept a gift after enduring insults from his family. "This is not happening. Your family has been insulting me for too long, and you never once stood up for me. Instead, you made up these lies about how I'm using your money," I asserted, feeling the need to address the long-standing issue. Jake attempted to downplay the situation, claiming I was overreacting. However, I stood my ground, stating, "No, I am not overreacting. All the people here know what your family has been calling me. They were here when you let them insult me during our engagement party." Feeling the weight of years of disrespect and humiliation, I finally decided I could no longer tolerate the toxic environment. I sternly told Jake, I want a divorce. He attempted to plead and explain, but my mom intervened, advising him to keep quiet. "You never defended my girl all these years. It's time she ends this toxic relationship for good," she asserted. We left the party, leaving the shocked attendees whispering amongst themselves. Despite exposing Jake to his extended family, friends, and colleagues, I didn't care anymore. I was done with him. Mom and I went straight to the house, collected my belongings, and Jake kept blowing up my phone in an attempt to talk. I muted it and went to stay with my mother. The next day, I contacted my cousin, a lawyer, to draw up divorce papers. With a prenuptial agreement in place, the split would be straightforward, and I wouldn't have to give him any money, despite having more than him now. Jake and his family showed up at my mom's place demanding to talk. Mom firmly told them to leave, and Jake kept trying to contact me, sending a range of messages from sobbing apologies to threatening harm. I stored all the recordings, preparing for a potential restraining order. Despite the emotional turmoil, I found strength in my mother's support. Jake even tried to show up at my office, but security was informed beforehand, promptly removing him. It was then I decided to quit my job. Though well-paying, my booming business meant I no longer needed it, and I wasn't interested in becoming a millionaire. I simply desired a peaceful life with dignity, so I submitted my notice that day and decided to move forward. A week after serving Jake with divorce papers at his workplace, he showed up at my former workplace, only to discover I had already quit. Colleagues informed me about his persistent attempts to send flowers and gifts to my mother's address. We returned the parcels, but the harassment continued, prompting me to contemplate relocation. With my mother's support, I found a perfect house in the next state, offering me a haven away from my ex. Currently awaiting finalization of paperwork, the judge granted a relatively smooth divorce due to the solid prenuptial agreement. During the 6 months of separation, I used the time to gather myself. Once the divorce was finalized, I promptly moved to my new home, changing my number to escape the relentless spam from Jake and his family. I heard Jake's life was in turmoil, blaming his parents for the marriage breakdown. Professionally, he faced a significant setback, with colleagues avoiding him and seniors displeased with the negative publicity in their close-knit community. His parents resorted to spreading rumors about infidelity, but fortunately, these falsehoods failed to gain traction. On the contrary, my life took a positive turn. Focused on enhancing my business and relishing newfound freedom, I started going out and even ventured into the dating scene. Jake's insecurities made me cautious about committing too quickly, but I remain hopeful that with time, I will heal and find someone who truly cherishes me. While Jake's actions caused me pain, the strength gained from overcoming those challenges has propelled me into a brighter future, full of possibilities